academics. And I am IGC Country Chair for Psychology and Mental Health. As we are here to discuss this crucial topic, as we know that for too long, men have been expected to be a strong, self-reliant, and emotionally resilient. But these expectations have led to a dangerous silence. Now it's time to break that silence and start an honest conversations. Let's start with some key statistics on the global reality of men's mental health. More than 280 million people worldwide suffer from depression. And according to WHO, World Health Organization, men accounts for 75% of all suicides globally. In high income countries, men are 3 to 4 times more likely to die by suicide than women. And countries like Russia, South Africa, India, they report some of the highest male suicides rates in the world. And in the UK alone, 3 out of 4 suicides are men, and suicides remains the leading cause of death for men under 50. Now, why men are struggling? One of the biggest reasons for this crisis is stigma that is attached to the mental health. Now, societies often discourage men from expressing their emotions. I hope I'm not lost. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
We can,
My
Nia.
screen went off. Sorry. Now, even studies they shows that men are more likely they are far more likely to seek professional help. And due to unhealthy coping mechanisms, many men they turn to alcohol, substance abuse, or risky behaviors such as suicides. Whereas asking for help is not a weakness, it is a sign of strength. Seeking support for mental health should be as normal as seeking help for physical health. For example, if you had a serious health injury or illness, what do? We go to a doctor without hesitation. So why is mental health any different? One of the other reason is societal pressure for men, which includes like the expectation to be a provider, and they can show no weakness. The fear of being judged for opening up is also one of the main reason, and even a lack of male role model who can talk openly about mental health. These pressures often led to serious consequences, including isolating, substance abuse, and tragically suicide. Now, what we can do? We can encourage open discussions. The more we talk about mental health, the less stigma there will be. Thus, this is one of the reasons we schedule Zoom meetings covering various crucial topics at IGC, and we encourage open dialogues. Sometimes a simple, even how are you doing, can make all differences. And seeking professional help, therapies, support helps, groups, or sometimes talking to a friend can save lives. Strength is not about suffering alone, it's about having the courage to ask for help. Thank you. Now, I would like to introduce our next speaker, Christopher Molly, a qualified mental health social worker dedicated to supporting mental well being. Today, he will share valuable insight. Please welcome Christopher Molly.
Hello, everybody. It's a privilege to be here, and thank you for the introduction. I think you're spot on. I mean, I've got a background in mental health social work. Am I on mute?
No, we can hear you.
Yes,
Right.
we can hear you.
So I've got a background in mental health social work. There was an article that I did some time ago. However, I've been on the other side of new services, mental health services. I've been sectioned under the Mental Health Act. I've accessed substance misuse, alcohol misuse, being homeless. And I think one of the issues that I've got is that stigma. And I think masculinity as well, and the way that that is perpetuated, the way that society is structured globally, patriarchal. I was brought up in a very stiff upper lip sort of family. My father was in the forces. My two brothers, however, find it very difficult to talk about emotions. I'm involved currently in Sheffield in the UK in outcome measures for people in recovery, and I'm doing it on a local and national level. I think one of the main issues is that we are underpinned by white Eurocentric psychiatric model, which is about people's deficits. It's about people, it's the disease model, it's the medical model. And I think we don't talk enough about strengths, identity, meaning, and connection. Where I work and do some quality improvement for the local NHS, they are obsessed with symptoms, and we need to come out of that model. We need to go beyond the diagnostic model. In the UK particularly, we're trying to move away from a clustering tool, which talks about mood, hearing voices, unusual thoughts, sort of suicidal ideation. I don't like the word recovery because I think it's more to do with acceptance and meaning. I accept Chris, I'm good enough. I'm a good enough son, I'm a good enough person, and I'm a good enough father. However, it's about the environment. I'm okay talking here today about it. If I was going to a family meal to talk about it, it would be a different subject. I would be sat there eating my meal, having a cup of tea, and wouldn't be saying much. And I think, you know, there's an organisation in the UK called Andy's Club where people get together and talk about men's issues, problems. And I think we are some way to normalising some things. However, going beyond a diagnosis, I believe that there are certain diagnoses that are more damaging than helpful. I experienced first-time episode psychosis when I was at university and eventually qualified. But because I was 1 year out of the threshold of accessing the early intervention team in psychosis, I was labelled with schizophrenia. What is schizophrenia? It's a set of symptoms that are clustered, and then a diagnostic criteria is slapped on somebody. So hearing voices, seeing things that other people don't, feeling things that other people don't, sort of tactile smells. And I realised in 2003 that I needed to come out of the medical model of services. So I set up, it was a national group, but it started off in Sheffield, and they called it the Paranoia Network. I wanted to reframe my experiences in a different idiom. So there were 13 people that started the group, which I was surprised. In fact, I thought it was quite funny in some ways that you've got 13 people in a room, a self-help peer support group that are quite intensely paranoid. But what that did for people, instead of being in life's lay-by, they attached some meaning to their experiences. So instead of me still perceiving a diagnostic sort of label, which is very stigmatizing in any culture, I think, schizophrenia, there's a lot of media coverage that you're sort of crazy, dangerous, unpredictable. I was told by a psychiatrist within 20 minutes that he diagnosed me with schizophrenia, and he said, put your work diary away and enjoy the rest of your life. Thankfully, I attacked hope. I had a strong work ethic. I had a strong purpose for life. It was a dark place, very dark. I was coping with substance misuse, heroin, crack, alcohol. But I knew that I think I had an epiphany when I travelled India. And I spoke to many people, and I went to Nepal as well. And I realised that there is more to me than my diagnostic sort of label. And I think it became more about connection, identity, and acceptance. But I realised the many people that I've spoke to in Southeast Asia and in Thailand as well, that the Western model globally, I was talking to somebody in Zimbabwe a few weeks ago, and in Cape Town in South Africa, I'm saddened that the Western model of psychiatry is being prescribed to other countries, because I think it's imposed and it's more to do with economy. Sometimes in the UK, getting people back to work, it's not about identity, connection, belonging. And I think who are white, often psychiatry or other psychiatry models within the UK have in some ways have the right to impose on communities that really we don't know much about. So I think there is an organisation called With Humanity, and that is about supporting communities with models that are most probably culturally more appropriate. And what comes alongside the medical model is about deficits, medication, pharmaceutical companies. So in a nutshell, I don't want to go on and on, but I feel as though this talk is so important, not just for men. I've worked in substance misuse rehabs. I've come across situations with young mums, and I'll give you one example. A young mum had a baby, which was in the specialist baby care unit. This baby was detoxing off heroin. And I stood there with this young woman, and I looked at the nurses and to make sure they were looking at me, and I said, I'll think of a different name. Alice. I said, Alice, can I just put my arm on your shoulder? And I just said, things will be okay. But obviously what this young person had experienced is the stigma within her family, her community. And quite often, young women are seen as sort of not being able to cope, quite often in society as neurotic. And that was the most powerful experience that I had the privilege of being part of. And to watch a baby going through a detox was horrific. However, what this person wanted was acceptance, dignity, and respect. That these sort of things can happen to anybody. We have to normalise emotions. Everybody in this room knows what loss is. Everybody knows in this room what a dark place is. Do we really talk about it? We do in these environments, but really, do we talk to every single friend or every single connection that we have as openly? I don't think we do. So that's why I do lots of talks and I'm involved in what I do. I do a lot of free stuff. I've done articles. I've done conference talks, and I do a lot of training workshops part-time. The reason why I do it part-time is because my mum's got dementia, and I look out for my mum. You can tell I'm emotional because it is an emotive subject. My daughters went through a lot, and when we were experiencing COVID, I think we felt more connected. I think there were some positive things that came out of COVID that, hold on a minute, you could almost normalise the feeling across all societies that we knew what isolation felt like. And one of the startling figures that I was looking at was that globally, there's 720,000 suicides every year. But the statistics aren't right, because in poverty, ostracized groups around the world, they're not counted. And I'm really apologize if I've got this quote wrong, but when I went to India, somebody was talking to me about a community there. And I was astounded. I'd read about it, but when I actually spoke to somebody, they talked about a community called the Untouchables. Now, certain communities around the world are rejected, isolated, and aren't communicated with dignity, respect. So I hope the world does become a movement. And if you want to ask any questions, please do. And I think there are many, many layers below somebody's mental health. Oppression. We don't talk about human rights, civil liberties. So I'll just open it out now to see if anybody wants to ask a question. And I'm privileged to be here as a male, as Chris, to be alongside people who think a lot of similar things.
Now, can I just ask, can we have all the speakers say first, and maybe them at the end, people can ask questions, if that's okay? Yeah?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
So if we go into, thank you.
Our next speaker is Julie Ann Blackmore, the founder, managing director, and a passionate self-development leader. With her dedication to personal growth and empowerment, she brings valuable insight to today's discussion. Welcome, Julie Ann.
Thank you, Leah. Thanks very much for having me. First of all, I'd like to say well done, Chris. Absolutely fantastic that you've pulled yourself out of such a dark place, that you've opened your mind up, you've opened your heart up, you've shared your knowledge in this group, but not just in this group, with all the people that you're going around and giving permission to talk. And I think this is so important. And Nia, you said about a word, and my word's trust. And going back to what Chris said, he's happy to discuss this here, but maybe not with his family. Maybe the relationships aren't in that area where you can discuss that kind of thing. And I think it's so important, firstly, to feel safe enough to open up and share feelings, whatever our gender, whatever the problem. But the only way we're ever going to change our false identity, which is causing our mental health problems, like a root that we've been told we're not good enough. It's been passed on and passed on and passed on and fed by so many different people, by society's beliefs, by this human destructive food chain that men are above women, women are now trying to get above men, everyone's fighting inside, they're fighting each other outside. That creates a lot of anxiety, that creates a lot of depression. And we need to start developing ourselves, all our systems, to be able to change that from within. And when you start to change it from within, you start to change things on the outside. Because we're like catalysts walking around. And the more you develop your own self-respect, your own self-awareness, your own trust in yourself, your own ability to see the problems that are wrong with me. And how do I get over those? How do I change this false reality that has been reinforced into my mind daily? So the way to do that is to tell yourself the truth. Just like Chris said, you're enough. You're enough as a father, you're enough as a son, you're enough as a man, and we are enough. It's a massive beat me up stick to say I'm not good enough. And it means nothing. It absolutely means nothing. But it's like a stranglehold weed that gets you and suffocates you from being true to yourself in so many different ways. So I think that people really need to start to become more aware of themselves, that they can regulate their health, they can control their nervous systems when they get triggered by something, and they can start to change their internal dialogue. So when that weed is growing in them, not to feed it themselves is a really important point. So every time you hear you're stupid, you're thick, you're incapable, you're not, you're not good enough, you shouldn't be doing that, you can't, counteract it and say, actually, that's a weed. I want the tree of truth, because the tree of truth is where my health comes from, and keep feeding that. And through that, you develop a higher level of self-worth. And that changes what you're willing to tolerate on the outside of how you're letting people treat you, what you're willing to zero tolerate. That develops your boundaries and your respect. And as you start to develop your respect, you start to realize, actually, I will no longer tolerate that behavior, or I will not let that person enter into my life, or anyone else who's like that. I've had years of narcissistic abuse from my mother, father, and sister. And even after all my knowledge of self-development and developing my respect to the point where I'm absolutely out the food chain, no one can connect to me with any of that in their mind ever again. And I've put it to the test. I still react at certain things that were bedded into me, that were manipulated into me from very early on, that if I smile, I'll get hit again. If I show I'm intelligent, so I've been a bit shaky sitting here because I'm getting triggered. But I'm okay to talk about it, and I'm okay because I know I can't be preyed on again. And this is the problem. Back to trust, you have to know who you're trusting to tell this information to open up your soul, to open up your dark places, to be honest about how you feel, how much you drink, whether you take drugs, whether you don't, whether you beat yourself up mentally, or you actually, physically self-harm, or you feel suicidal. It's so important to trust in yourself, to trust the right person. And that person or those people will come into your life and they will support you in your growth all through your life. And as you develop your self-worth and your self-respect, then the people that aren't good for you, like I said, you won't want them in your life, and you won't be able to, they won't be able to connect to you. They won't be able to connect to you energetically, verbally, physically. So that alone helps you to develop strength, again, physical strength, because our mental health, our subconscious holding on to all this noise and nonsense that you might not even be consciously aware of, is destroying our physical bodies. And you can take a pill, you can exchange alcohol for another medicine like ecstatic dancing. A lot of people, I go to ecstatic dancing, and a lot of people there have had drug and alcohol problems, and they now use the music as their medicine. But you're not getting rid of the problem, you're only treating it. And I think it's a DIY job. You have to get rid of the problem. And the root of the problem of mental health is a false identity. That you're not good enough, you're a failure, you're not powerful inside, you don't know anything. All of this, it's all just being fed in continually. And I think if we can start to put out more positive information, because misinformation causes physical inflammation. And this is part of the chronic diseases that we're seeing, because we're under threat all the time as prey, because there are a lot of predators out in the world. And unless we've developed ourselves internally, we're at risk of being preyed on. And particularly if we've had issues in the past, or we're opening ourselves up gradually, whether, again, whatever gender, whatever age, that's a vulnerability that shouldn't be poked at. We should never poke at each other's scars. We should acknowledge them. We should have empathy or compassion for them and develop that person as they choose to be developed in whatever way is right for them. And if that's, well, I've written lots of self-development books to take people on their own journey. So I guide them through all their systems, developing them to be as strong as they possibly can, all the way from back to basics. Who am I? What am I doing here? To you have so much power, you can change every molecule in your body and live as long as you want. And that's another topic. But for now, mental health, I think it's so sad that people choose suicide over change. I kept my worth strong as a child. I don't know how. I had OCD when I was young because of all the nonsense that was being fed into my head, but I knew something was wrong, so I changed it. I got over it, so I didn't carry it on. And I don't like labeling things unless it empowers you, because if you label yourself, that label sticks. So I think there's a huge epidemic of mental health that we are yet to even really see the depth of the problem in the world, and the internet is allowing us access to see more and more of it. COVID kind of lifted up the carpet on it because so many people were isolated and lonely and feeling disconnected because they couldn't actually physically get out. But that's also breeding more codependency in people, which is another I'm not good enough, that I need my value outside of me, burnout, getting higher. I haven't got statistics, unfortunately, but all these diseases, all these problems, they're getting worse because people are, particularly in the younger culture now, are being shown that fame, celebrity, money, that's your worth, that's it. If you don't have the next million in your mind, if you haven't got your first million, if you haven't got all this popularity online, regardless of who these people are that are connected to you, it's a figure. So if we can teach and explain and nurture and open up people's minds into it's within you. Your worth is never, ever outside of you. Nothing you do, how much money you have, who your best friend is, how many celebrities you speak to, whether you're a celebrity yourself, how many times you're on YouTube video, anything, none of that is actually ever going to change your self-worth. And it's called self-worth for a reason. And self-worth is really what we need to develop and be teaching children very early on, how to set strong boundaries, what self-respect means. And you don't have to be aggressive. I think men are have so many issues on top because they're being conditioned for eons to protect and provide. And again, you know, how much can that pressurize someone into, and then think, well, I've lost my job, or my salary's gone down, or I can't provide for my children, or I can't provide for this woman in my life, or I'm not very good at protecting it. So we have to step out of conditioning and start creating the truth in our minds and in other people's minds, and back that up with feedback, with experiences, with results. You know, if it's not working, then change it. If it is working, then don't change it. Keep doing what you're doing because it's obviously working. And I think that when we redefine ourselves and let go of these labels, as particularly mental health ones, like I am autistic, or I have ADHD, or I have depression, if you keep holding on to that, you're reinforcing every morning you wake up, I'm depressed. Every morning you wake up, I'm a victim. Every morning. So if we can switch that around gradually and help people to realize they actually have so much power. They're not powerful. That again is a fake reality that, you know, that comes from control. And we are hitting into a new world where so many people now are willing to embrace their own power to create the mind that they want, create the body that they want, create the life they want, create the job, the world how they want it to be, to live in. And I think this is a really painful but exciting time. It's painful because we have to clear out all the past conditioning and really do real deep healing. And sometimes you can't do that by yourself. Sometimes you do need someone, or many, even if it's just walking down the street when you're a bit down and bumping into the right person to have a chat with, who you trust, who is there available with a listening ear. And sometimes that's all someone needs for that moment. But if we keep trying to stick plasters over everything and fixing things, the symptoms will return, whether that's mental or physical or emotional. So we really do have to get to the root of the problem and stop it from spreading in our own minds and other people's. I think, yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you, Julianne, for your insightful thoughts.
Thank you.
I would now like to introduce Dr. Tisha Patel, our next speaker, who is a dedicated NHS GP, entrepreneur, executive coach, and IGC country chair for coaching, health, and wellness. With her extensive experience in health and well being, she is passionate about breaking barriers and fostering meaningful conversations. Dr. Tisha, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Neha. Thank you, Chris and Julianne, for enlightening talks and different perspectives. Speaking to people outside my field in general practice, it's always enlightening to hear different viewpoints and valid viewpoints. I suppose I was attracted to come here as a speaker, both in my role as a GP, but also as a coach and a mother. So threefold, really. As a GP, in the last 3 weeks, I've actually had a patient who's committed suicide. And when you look at it, they were male. And when you look at the proportion, I suppose in the last few years, 3 to 1, male to female. So it is true. We see a lot of mental health. I know stats say 12% of what we see is mental health, but I'd say it's a lot more. And so, in effect, as doctors, we get affected by mental health ourselves, especially if we have other conditions. So my viewpoint on mental health comes from a different perspective and something I practice to try and keep it at a level that I can manage. And that's to be open and honest and talk about emotions and show your vulnerable side in all you do. We're told less often as a GP, but as a coach, occasionally, but as a person on social media as well, yes. You know, that's my forum to talk about emotions and let everyone know. Some people reach out and say you're all over the place, but I think it's healthy to talk about emotions and how we deal with them, especially for any sex. It also creates a space. And I think for mental health, men's mental health, we've got to start early on. You've got to start in your own homes And yeah, and I can't help but, I know, Chris, you said, you know, you're starting to feel emotional. I'm starting to feel a bit emotional as well. It's inevitable, but you've got to show and ask and raise that space to say, are you okay? You know, with your son or your daughter, is everything okay? You know, and what's going on for you? You've got to start early. And when you don't do that, that's when it starts becoming hidden and held back and not voiced. The other thing to do is make sure it's okay to show your own emotion. For example, when you're in pain or your mental health is low, it's usually not the daughter that notices, it's my son. And that speaks for itself. So, you know, I've come to recognize he's the more emotional one as well. And you've got to start early on. So making that space, showing your vulnerability, start early on. And I think we can take that further, can't we, into schools and make sure it's okay to show emotions. Why, you know, we're talking about men's mental health, but I think before they even get there, we need to target that audience that will, in the future, in 10 to 15, 20 years' time, become that man. So, yeah, I think that it's very important to come from that point of view as well. Yeah. So it's a short one from me. Thank you. Thank you, Neha.
Thank you, Dr. Disha. Thank you
And
so much.
sorry, Nia.
Unfortunately, our speaker, Fortunate Kufa Kuneshu, who could not join us today, but we will still want to recognize her incredible work in the field of mental health. She is a pastor, certified life coach, and marriage and family therapist dedicated to supporting emotional well being. Fortunate continues to inspire change in many lives. We look forward to hearing from her in our future sessions. If anyone would like to share their thoughts or experience on this important topic, or if anyone have any question for our speakers, we would love to hear from you.
Nia, can I just mention Jonathan very kindly, when I requested, had agreed to join us at such short notice. Could we give the floor over to him? He's a very experienced coach, and I mean, he talks a lot, a lot about the issues we've been facing. So please, Jonathan, if I could have you say a few minutes, is that okay, Nia?
Yeah, that's
Yeah, sure,
fine.
Abby. Yeah, thank you.
Hi. Yes, so I'm Jonathan, and I got the message. I actually am in hospital at the moment as I broke my ankle trying to recover from having a series of strokes 18 years ago. So, like Chris at the beginning, I've had 28 years of quite significant medical conditions, accidents, deaths, near deaths, and all the rest of it. And he's quite right. I don't think my family environment was quite as you've got to be a strong man, but the perniciousness of the underlying conditioning does mean that too many men, and it's affecting young men even worse these days because there's this pressure that women have been under for ever, basically. But now you've got young men taking steroids in the gym, exercising to death, doing ketogenic diets, and not having proper nutrition, not having enough sleep. And essentially, I see this everywhere because looking after my own brain after strokes, you start noticing how other people are dealing, what kind of language they're using, and what their internal narratives speak of. So I have struggled, consumed drugs and alcohol. I lost the use of my upper right body in a motorcycle accident when I was 23. And for the first 6 years after that, and this is being recorded, and I don't know who's going to see it, but I trust the environment. For 6 years, I drank and drug drove every day whilst holding down a mid-level management job. And so ability to be a functional alcoholic, a functional drug addict, masks the extent of the problem. And you were speaking earlier that there is going to be an explosion of, the term mental health is a bit of a misnomer to me. There's going to be an explosion of depression and suicide. I put in the notes a bit earlier that women actually attempt suicide 3 to 4 times as many times as men, but men are, I suppose, more use more brute force, I think is the fairest to say. I live with incredible chronic and acute pain, and I'm in hospital for this broken ankle. The amount of medication I have to have just to sleep is so high that if you took what I was taking, there's a very good chance you wouldn't wake up at all. And it only keeps me asleep for maybe 6 hours before the pain starts throbbing through. And so being woken by pain every day, and it's a pain that, so I don't take pain medication during the day, but I do smoke weed because, and if women have given birth naturally here, I'm told it's like contraction pain. It's like and you haven't seen me do it yet because it hasn't hit me, but give it an hour or so later on, my brain's a bit more tired, and shooting spikes of pain hit me anywhere between every 30 seconds, well, anywhere between 5 minutes and 30 seconds. And so there are times when I simply, you know, it's not quite suicidal ideation, but I do have a DNR. I also have an advanced care plan. And when the surgeon and the anesthetic team came round before my operation, I said to them, I've got a DNR and an advanced care plan. If I go, just let me go. Because whilst I don't particularly want to die, so I haven't really tried to kill myself since 1996 when I was doing the drugs and alcohol. I haven't really tried to kill myself, but I do wonder. Well, let's put it this way. I reframe death as I'll be grateful for the rest, because living with the pain is a challenge, that is very severe. But then I talk to people who can see my physical disabilities, and because I've learnt to now listen and not try to answer, just to let the space, just to be quiet. And, talking to people, you can be quiet for a minute and it seems like forever. But when listening to people and you allow them that space, what you hear are terrible, terrible mental health stories, family bereavements, narcissistic partners, bullying bosses. I'm doing a post on bullying at the moment. So I've come through a lot of trauma. Ironically, so I use my brain to try and help other people. And I think that I'm quite happy to speak to anyone. I'm on camera. I've got loads of YouTube videos talking about the things I struggle with, because I feel that if I can make one person go, oh shit, I'm not alone, I'm not the only one, then that's something I think is worthwhile. So drug and alcohol misuse, suicidal ideation, frankly, flirting with death by driving that way. The only way I got myself out of that hole was I got caught doing 40 miles an hour in a 30 zone with a speed camera. And that was the first piece of external feedback I'd had about my behavior. And I went, oh shit, And from then on, I did this thing. There's an organization called ROSPA, the Royal Society for the Prevention of Accidents. They do an advanced driving course because I was massively full of road rage because I'd had a motorcycle accident from a car pulling out in front of me. And I was driving around, racing up behind people, flashing my lights, whooping the horn. You know, I just, it was so out of control that I mean, I'm lucky I didn't kill someone. If I killed myself, I didn't care. But the taking someone else was the thing that ultimately made me reevaluate and address my behavior. So I think that almost everybody I speak to has at least some trauma, and most people have some quite severe trauma. I also put in the chat the book The Myth of Normal by Gabor Maté, and there's a statistic in that about how women, so I know it's mental health, but it's about how these traumas manifest as inflammation injuries, which women obviously suffer, fibromyalgia, all these various pains that come about because what women are trained, conditioned to do in heterosexual relationships is suppress their own self, their own issues, to please, because they've been conditioned to please and to serve the men in their lives. And so one thing that I found shocking in that book is that women suffer from multiple sclerosis 8 times more than men because they are suppressing these issues. Women are also, so I speak to, and this project is all about girls' education and women in the workforce. And I forgot my train of thought now. But oh yes, the female entrepreneurs that I speak to, almost every single one is neurodivergent, ADD, ADHD, autism, what else is there? Dyslexia, dyscalculia. And I read out these attributes from a book called The Gift of Dyslexia without using the word dyslexia. And they go, oh yeah. And it's really ideas bouncing off the back of your head, and it's the internal space and the inability to speak without the other person jumping in with their thoughts that cause this problem to perpetuate. So I've come through it. I'm too old now to die young. So ask me any questions you want, and I'd be happy to. In fact, I'm very keen to interview people whose lives have been impacted for a YouTube channel, just letting people speak. So if you want to reach out to me, I put my LinkedIn details in the chat, potency.world or potency world. So that I think is what I can add.
Thank you so much, Jonathan, for joining us today. If anyone have any question for our speaker.
Miss England's got her hand up. Nia, if you could, Miss England.
Good morning. I know it's not morning there. I don't know where most of you guys are, but I am in the States. And so thank you so much, Dr. Abinash, for having me. And I don't want to jump in unaware of what has been being said, because I just jumped in. I just got online. However, I know that this topic is in regards to mental health. And what I would like to say is that I think knowing the difference between mental health and not healing from childhood trauma is really, really important. When we have not healed from childhood trauma, we carry that over into adulthood, and it causes us to act erratical, and we have these behaviors that we do not know, like what the heck is going on. You know, we had no control over what was planted on us as children, what we've seen, what we've gone through. I grew up in a domestic violent household. You know, my mom was an addict. I love my mom dearly. You only get one. She has her own trauma to go through, have been through, and I've had to understand that. And the reason why my camera is off because I'm getting prepared for an event myself today. But I did let Dr. Abanash know that I would attempt to come on. Um, I was a teenage mom. Just being brought up in that type of environment. I also went into alcoholism, and now I'm in the substance use disorder field where I help individuals regain their confidence and become impactful and advocate for their children. And again, I think the biggest factor of dividing mental health, because I had a child out of 4 of my daughters, I had one child that did suffer severely from mental health because it was DNA'd into her. And having residual unhealing factors from our childhood trauma that we have never had an opportunity to deal with. So I will leave it there until I know more about, what our conversation is really about. I do appreciate what Jonathan has brought to the table. I've done a lot of my healing work by really believing in God. That's just what I've done. And I have been able to be healed from a lot of things. And now I help others in their journey of being healed and just dealing with crap that had that they had no control over. Once we can see our own 2 ears outside of the mirror, whether it's manipulating, whatever it is, whatever it is, whether it's jealousy, whether it's lack of whatever it may be that causes us to act out of character and not out of a really good place of heart-centered love towards each other, we have to be okay with addressing that so that we can heal from the inside out. Thank you.
We have Zara who would like to share her thought.
Hi, everybody, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share. I'd like to acknowledge listening to everybody here, just sharing from their heart and their experience. Trisha, as a GP, just acknowledging that, emotions are something that we are suppressing a lot. That really resonated with me. And Chris, also that community that you're growing, I'd love to have a one-to-one with you and find out about it, because I do believe we need more groups of people supporting each other and just giving each other that floor to speak. And also, Julianne, yes, that whole authentic self that we talk about and not feeling connected, not being able to explain ourselves to others, where people perceive us and judge us so easily, especially if we're not neurodivergent. And yes, there are that conditioning that goes through when we feel we're not good enough. Yeah, it's one of the biggest sources of unhappiness, unfortunately. And we just allow those sort of naysayers to keep telling us that there's something wrong with us, shut up, be quiet, it's not your place. And it happens a lot, starting from school, when the teacher goes, shh, be quiet. So my uniqueness is that I am kind of half normal, half neurodivergent. And I talk about these things called intangible drivers that apparently we're born with. As an exhorter-how that I am, I was often told to be quiet. And somebody like Tony Robbins is an exhorter, just to give you an idea. And so we either end up being quite emotional in public if we're upset. And if people don't listen to us, we tend to ramp up. And telling us to be quiet is like one of the worst things. Unfortunately, this is not understood in the education system. We see those signs in the hospital with a nurse going, shh, be quiet. And, who ends up in hospital? Someone who's not been understood, someone who's not been heard. And out of the 4 intangible drivers that are neurodivergent, exhorters is one of them. So let's raise awareness around understanding people as opposed to how should you behave here. And I'm not saying we should make allowances for everybody, but understanding those are triggers, and we can help ourselves go, okay, I understand. This is why I feel rubbish right now. And okay, I don't have to look at that sign. Yeah. And if I'm feeling upset, I can speak to somebody and just let them know that I'm feeling, because we talk about oxytocin. being produced. I'm sure lots of you here could probably teach me how to suck an egg, but oxytocin apparently is produced to force us to share, right? It's that bonding hormone. Yet most of us kind of take it all inward, don't talk to anybody, don't trust anybody. Maybe going back to our childhood, our families, that whole stiff upper lip thing. I was brought up with a stiff upper lip situation too. And I found it was easier to confide in strangers. And often some of those strangers were gunning for me, for months on end. There was one particular gentleman, I won't mention where he was from. He took 9 months to get to that point. I trusted him. And then he used everything I told him against me one day. So what happens when we share our stories? It leaves the brain and it returns back to the brain, and it's how it's received. But then what happens if someone suddenly does something like that? Now we have a shortcut in the brain to that person, that event. And now I don't feel like I want to tell those stories again. But what I tend to do is help people understand generational trauma, because I went through quite a lot of that, having a mixed race background, mixed race religion. I feel like I've been brought up across diversity and inclusion, and men tend to open up to me. There's one problem though. When you share something as a gentleman with a lady for the first time that you haven't done before, the way the model of the brain is, this is John Lenhart's work, by the way, and I'm quite happy to introduce you to it, they grow an attraction to her. Now, I'm a married woman, so it causes lots of problems for me when I get that, which is why I'm really looking to have a group of people supporting men, an open forum where I tell stories and I go, okay, what would you do at my place? And suddenly they go, people like that exist. And they go, well, I'd feel like punching them. I'd feel like hurting them. And then I go, okay, well, let me tell you a little bit more about this situation. I have a mortgage and he's my boss. What do you think is going to happen if I punch him? And it's just raising awareness around, why are we reacting? Why have we got to that point? And I think if we have those types of forums where we make it fun, engaging, also, I found people want to return. The stigma is slightly removed, and it's a gradual approach into encouraging men to share and just talk amongst themselves a little bit. So that's what I like doing. But my biggest why is I want to see the world a better place, where people are understood, where mothers understand their children better. And I find the mums in the streets sometimes, I find the dads in the streets sometimes, and I help them understand that child who's got a different intangible driver to what people call normal. I give them some tips on how to handle them, because I believe that happiness is, that family unit, if we try and understand each other, as opposed to having to feel like you're lost, like you're another, and then having to reach out to strangers. So slowly does it. We're not there. It's going to take lots of us to make this work. But thank you for allowing me to share. And there's a link I can drop in for that test if anybody wants to sit it. I'm a server exhorter, which means I see a need, I want to fulfill it. I can see things from other people's perspectives. I do see a need, and focusing is a little bit tricky for me. And I'm forward, which is what normally people call ADHD these days. I find diarizing really helps me, and just sitting down, having a bit of quiet time and go, what is it I want to do? Is it this server why of me driving me, feeling like I have to do this? Or can I be helpful towards a cause that I feel passionate about, by giving my time up as opposed to spending time with my kid? So thank you. All right, yes.
Thank you so much. Now we have Caroline, who would like to share some thoughts.
Hope you all are good. I'm Caroline Titia from Kenya. I am with the Ishkama Global that Joshua Ogbo created last year.
Yes.
I am so happy to be here today, and this topic excites me because it is something that we have been quiet about, that we really need to raise our voices about, because I would say that major problems that we're experiencing right now are as a result of mental health issues. recently we've had a lot. Maybe I should just introduce myself properly. I am Caroline, I've said that, and I am the GBV ambassador for Africa. And in terms of gender-based violence, I'm not only focusing on women, but on men as well. And at an individual level, I'm trying to educate my peers, the youth, so that they understand how to deal with issues and how to come out of problems and how to process things, because from time to time we're meant to get in an argument or a misunderstanding, but how you come out of that misunderstanding is what matters. We do not want people who develop coping mechanisms that hurt themselves or hurt others. You as an individual, you're as important as your neighbor. Some of us tend to love our neighbors more than we love our own selves, but we should really love ourselves to understand what our neighbor needs. And I'd say that taking care of our mental health, majorly men, they've been, I think, all over the world, considered to be, I don't know, emotionless issues, which that should be the case. There are humans, we all and even in a community where it's majorly told that you're a child, you have nothing to face your about, you're currently going to school, you really do not have the space for stress. But kids can go through stress. And I just want to highlight that these things need to be taken care of at a young age. The children learn to understand that sometimes it is okay not to win in an argument, and sometimes it is okay to give someone who is angry or very hypersensitive, to give them space. In as much as you might feel offended, just find time when the space or the atmosphere is welcoming to straighten up the conversation. If I could just give a personal story of my brother. We were raised together and without our mom. Growing up, it was just a different scenario. 2 daughters, 1 son, raised with our dad. And at that time, like I said, the kid is not supposed to be stressful so long as you're being given food and you're going to school. But there's needs that someone has. Maybe the son would see that the daughters are being taken care of more than him. There's misunderstandings that can happen. So from time to time, as they continue to grow, they try to push themselves out of the family lane. Like, I'm all by myself. Like, no one is going to listen to me. No one is going to help me. And this needs to be well understood in every family setup, that each child needs space. So they might they may go through stress at work, bullying, anything can come their way. But then, since they feel so alone and they cannot discuss these issues with someone on the outside, or they discuss it and the person gossips about it, and now it becomes like a nickname of them and what they're doing, they might resort to taking drugs and just to feel a sense of, being so isolated from the world and being so okay and very welcoming in their own space, which is not safe, because at the end of the day, they're going to interact with more people, they're going to be more upset. So the more they become cold, or the more they become numb to feelings, it actually hurts them, because if they become numb to emotions or feelings, they can do right about anything and they wouldn't feel like their conscience is disturbed or anything. So what I'm trying to do with the youth is to let them understand that their parents can make mistakes, other people can make mistakes, but it's about them understanding of how much they love themselves and keep on pushing forward to become a better person, so that another individual is not hurt in the process, or you don't see another individual isolating themselves to hurt other people. I'm teaching them to take care of themselves and take care of other people and guide other people in the same path, so that they understand who they are, and that if someone does anything wrong to you, that's their problem, but give them space, find a time that you guys can straighten things out. If it doesn't work out, just pray for them and make sure you have a healthy life, continue to empower other people. So I think that's what I had for today. I hope I've not taken much of your time, but thank you so much. All the presentations, all the things that I've had today are so moving, and I'm so glad. And I'd like us to continue communicating or putting these issues out there so that we save the world from a greater loss that is already starting to happen. Thank you all.
Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you. Just one thing, Caroline, thank you for becoming one of our ICG chairs for the region. And I think Ner, our ICG youth chair, Joshua, who's a very enterprising young man. So all of you, please, if you know anybody in that region, he's built up our youth contacts around there to help other young people. One of the reasons is, as we all know, there are bright, intelligent people and the young people, right? And they are suffering even from loss of jobs. When I was in Kenya, one of the things they were saying that is 70% young people employed. So obviously that has an impact on mental health. So I think I'll leave it to Nair to introduce Joshua. Okay, thanks, Nair.
Yes, Joshua, would you like to share any experience or if you have any thought on this topic? We would love to hear you.
Joshua, you can speak. We can see you.
Okay. Can you all hear me? Sorry, I had a little glitch. Can you all hear me? Okay.
Yes, we can hear you,
like
Joshua.
Like the CEO is saying, my name is Joshua from the continent of Africa, precisely in Nigeria right now. I'm very, very happy for this opportunity to be part of this great meeting. I've learned so much within the shortest period of time that I've been here. You know, I something particularly touched me from when Zara was speaking. You know, I think one of the ways that we can combat this mental health issue is when we recognize differences in people. You know, once we recognize difference in people, we'll be able to know that not everybody is the same.
Are you there, Joshua?
Nair, he's having, I think, connection problems. He said Nigeria, they had a bit of connections. So I think he's trying.
Yeah.
So maybe if you can go on to the next speaker, and then when he comes on, we can maybe ask him. I know he has been having problems.
Sorry,
We have praise.
sorry to interrupt. I can't find my hands up.
That's okay. You can speak, Chris.
Somebody mentioned about healing, and it's one of the things that I strongly believe that should replace the word replace the word when we talk about mental illness. Something happens, we heal. A bit like what Julianne was saying. So already the language straight away is about illness. Well, we respond to different life events, traumatic life events, in all different ways. And I think we don't embrace differences enough. We are unique and we should embrace that. And I always believe in strengths are in differences, not in similarities. And we learn so much. But I think the word healing in mental health services, particularly where I am locally and nationally, it should be about healing because it's less stigmatizing. it's more acceptable language. So I thank whoever brought up the word healing. I much prefer it. I think we should use it more. And particularly with what Jonathan was saying, thank you very much for sharing the issues around pain. One of the reasons that I started again using drugs was I was assaulted in 2015 and ended up with neurofunctional disorder, so I can end up with non-epileptic seizures. I get chronic pain, but I think going out to you all, thank you very much what you've all shared, because it is powerful, and I think powerful movements include a lot of people's experiences because it becomes a collective. I think the way forward is the non-medical disease model when we're talking about emotions and unusual experiences. I still hear voices. I look up on my wall and cabinet, I've got a big Buddha there. I'm not Buddhist, but it's my travels to India. And there's Tina Turner in a photo when she was a Buddhist. And she's like this. I really don't have a problem sitting here at night with my candles up. And Tina Turner, I can hear a voice. If I said that in a different environment, I'd be on a section 2 again. So just because people have unusual experiences and hear voices, it doesn't mean that they're ill. And the last little quote, and I can't remember who it was from, but it says, all are insane, but he who can analyze his delusions is a philosopher. So I feel I'm blessed with all the experiences I've had. It doesn't mean that I've not had a dark time, but I think it's added value to me. It's not deficits. It's hurt, as you've all shared your experiences. It's hard. But yeah, I just want to say thank you very, very much to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you. Nia?
We have Joshua, who would like to continue sharing his experience. Joshua?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry, I had to change position because the internet was going off and on. So, like I was saying, my thinking, or what I have come to realize, is one of the ways to combat mental health issues is to recognize differences. First of all, recognize differences for yourself, then for others. Once you know that everybody has their uniqueness and everybody is different from you, you also realize that actions are not as important as your reactions. So what could be done to you would not be as powerful as how you react to what is done to you or what is said to you or how you are treated. So once you recognize that this person is different from me, his perspective about life from my perspective about life, in that way, you will know that the results of his experiences he has had type of way. But if you love yourself to a very great extent, self-love, it will help you filter through what could cause a mental health reaction towards you. You would be able to lose the things that are unimportant and pick up the things that are important. When someone tells you to keep quiet, or when someone says something that embarrasses you, that's supposed to embarrass you in public, you can just shove it off and make the thing powerless. I always tell myself that whatever power anything has around me is the power I give to it. So if someone thinks I'm good enough for something and is expressing his displeasure towards how he feels about me, I look at myself and say, well, that's his opinion. That's what he thinks. That's how he feels. And then I say to myself that I'm good at what I do. I'm actually the best at what I do. I think I have a universal appeal. I think I'm good enough to represent myself and anybody, anywhere. In that way, I put myself in a good self-esteem that helps me operate properly. Where the world is having these issues is because These things are not taught from the infancy. They are not taught from childhood. The families should take up these mental health problems and teach it to their children, so that when children are growing, they grow up with a better self-esteem. They grow up with a better perspective about themselves. They love themselves for themselves first, letting them know that your opinion about yourself is more important than what another person thinks about you. In that way, a lot of people will not be bound by low self-esteem, will not be bound by mental health problems, and in that way we'll be able to have a better society, because what you picked up while growing up is what you display when out there. Whatever way the society is being shaped by past experiences. So people would behave better. They would display. They will express themselves better. People will have more experiences with them, and it will be like a continuous mirror effect when someone is delivered from a mental health condition, or protected from a mental health condition because of the way the family raised them. So that's what I believe. I think more awareness of this should be happening. They should put it as a curriculum in our schools. Books should be written about it, to capture the young minds, the children. They should make it make it interesting to learn about mental health, so that everybody is aware of it. Once you're aware of it, you can know if you have already started being affected with the mental health condition or a challenge. You'll be able to recognize that, oh, this is a mental health condition I'm having, and then a lot of people are going through it because there's not enough awareness. So platforms like this are really, really welcome. I'm so grateful to Ms. Baines for this great opportunity. Back here in Africa, we're doing all we can to spread the knowledge about mental health within men, within women, within teenagers. A lot of things that are going on. The conditions we find ourselves is enough to make mentally unstable. So I'm to learning more, representing this.
Thank you, Joshua, for sharing your thoughts. Now we have Lady Wynette, and we would love to hear her thoughts or any experience she would like to share.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity. How fantastic in everything. It has been so powerful hearing from everyone that has shared before me. I'm just going to echo what's been said in my mentoring and coaching, and we look at a few main points, but I'm going to talk about the 4 in a nutshell. Which is the root cause, which has been discussed on this forum, that looking at and addressing the root cause is crucial, and is crucial for several reasons. Number one, to find an effective solution. By looking at the root cause, you are able to dig what is that is causing that healing period of the mind, which is known as mental health. Looking at the well-being of someone also looks at the root cause. What is it? Like, for instance, for example, when my mum passed away, I was severely depressed. I was lost. I wasn't myself together. One could say my mind was challenged at that time because I was severely depressed. So we need to look at the root causes. Looking at the root causes is what helps, what we can help others with, and self-help ourselves too. The second one is prevention. By identifying the root cause, we can then help for it to prevent it from reoccurring again. And number 3 is looking at the holistic approach of healing by understanding mental health, and its influences, like as we are aware that it is influenced by multiple factors, but looking at a comprehensive approach in treating one that, and instead of looking at the symptoms, but looking again at the root cause. I would say something that sits on my mind is a self-empowerment sessions. There's nothing like finding your true value and loving yourself that will comfort you in the times that you are really low, when you are really down. That self-love envelopes you because it's inside you. That self-love is there to almost reassure you of your importance, of your value, of your purpose, of you, who you are. But thank you for listening to me, and thank you. It has been a fantastic section today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lady Renette. Now we have our founder and CEO, Abhinash Kipins, who would like to say a few words.
Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. It's been really appreciative. And if you wish anybody to be a host, I think mental health is not something that we can cover in one session. I mean, you're all experts, you're all experienced people. If you like to host the next one, because we will be doing a group of these, throughout the year, I love each of you to be the host, and and we will be happy to promote it. And obviously this was short notice, but next time, this is what I say to all my ICG chairs. If you give us 10 days, we can get it wider across, because the thing is, we have our ICGs based around the globe. All right. We are in 48 countries at the moment, and we have over nearly 650 readers worldwide in our magazine. And we are on WhatsApp and so on. And most of the people that are covered in my magazines are personal friends. And so if we can promote this, for me, mental health means a lot. I have suffered from it. And I think there is no shame to say that. My fear is, I am a great believer that God, like my late father used to say, God only gives work to those that has the shoulders to bear it. My policy in life is, why does it have to be always me? Whether it was to do with age concern, whether it was to do with children, whether it was, and my father said, that's because you can do it. I worked in the civil service. I mean, I basically covered everything. And even with magazine, there is a history behind it. It was to thank the NHS, because I don't think there was enough done for people who lost their lives. And there is another story behind that. The reason I launched that magazine was I saw a couple died, a doctor and his nurse wife, and they left behind 2 children, young children. And that caused me, I was sitting there watching the news with my laptop and my thing, and I thought, this is not on. They're giving their life for someone else. And to this day, I still worry about what's happened to those children. Because nowadays we are very much nuclear family. It doesn't matter if you're Asian, even the Asian families have become very nuclear. They have 1 child or whatever. And that worries me, because I only have 1 grandchild with 1 daughter. And I worry, if something that happens to my daughter or me, what will happen to him? And we talk about mental health. There are a lot of people, since this World Health Organization, I think sometimes organizations cause more problems than anything else. It's like, since the World Health, everybody quotes that World Health Organization had come up that mental health needs input in. So you've got these people who are not even experienced. I, for one, having worked for the civil service, I tend to research people. I get very annoyed when people say I have experience, they're not qualified, or they have no knowledge. Because I think a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing. Because I've gone through that. I've seen, like Dr. Tisha said, I've seen people commit suicide because people set up, do a 10-week course, and they think that's it. I remember when the World Health Organization again came up in the 1980s. Some of you may remember, the government was very up with it because they lost a journalist, they lost MP who committed suicide. So a program was set up called Time for Change. And I was on the NHS England board at that time. And it was decided that the doctors had too much to cope, because most people who came to see GPs was just to find someone to listen to. someone to talk to. All right. So my brother being having GP practice, and he said, oh, since we heard this, it wasn't confidential, it was going to go out anyway. So he said, you're a healer, you're a hypnotherapist, because I went through that because of what I went in my life. Widow at 26, you name it, everything, accident, So I thought, okay, so I trained to find out why. And this is one of the reasons I believe my daughter went into medicine, because she was quite young at that time, is that what makes the active, a woman that's considered a superwoman, a Wonder Woman, can turn anything, all right, and make it a success. How come she goes cuckoo? I couldn't speak. I didn't know I had to learn to speak. I had to learn to read. To this day, I still hate. If I'm nervous, which most people don't, because I'm a very good actress. And when I was like 14, when I was a very shy person, typical Asian girl in a small, we were one of, I think, 20 kids in the whole of the school. And the teachers always thought I had more potential than I think I did. And they wanted me to be in a play. I like to be in the back. I can make you a successful business person. I can get you projects, but don't put me in the front. That's not me. But my teacher said yes. So and the first thing he said to me, who is the actress you admire the most? Well, the only actress that I admire at that time, and I loved her photos, was Elizabeth Taylor, because she had color to my color. Yeah. Plus, to me, certain extent, she looked like my auntie, beautiful. So, and he said, well, go onto the stage and pretend you're Elizabeth Taylor. So, you do that. And as time went on, you learn to speak. And even when I had my head injury, all right, which took them 4.5 years to discover. So I wasn't going cuckoo. It was because I couldn't relate. So for me, this is a great thing that I am, I want to find, this is what my organization, we find experts, all right, but people who are sincere. A lot of people ask to join us, and, but it's only by invite only. And because people I know who care about others, and they want to share their knowledge and experience. But I'm also aware that each of us have our bills, our mortgages we have to provide. So the goal behind my organization is that first you put your health first. If you can't put, and your family and your business, there is no point rushing out to help your neighbor save his burning house if when you come back, you got nowhere. So put your needs first, then whatever you have, share your knowledge with the rest of the world. And that way we create a ripple of change. So I'm not going to take much of your time. I love you to be speakers. I love you to be hosts. If you think, but promote, when you're doing that, please promote your own businesses as well. That is the most important thing, right? And that's the only way we can become strong and powerful and change the way people think. Anywhere I have joined, I still get headhunted, but I mean, till even last week, I got asked back to join a couple of organizations. But now I have made a commitment to my team that I will, instead of, using my resources, my time for others, this is my time, because my team has been doing voluntary work and has done a lot of it to make the change. And for that, I will make sure that our people who join us will be the number one. And I'll never fall back on my promise. I can guarantee that. And you can do research on me and find out. So thank you for each and every one of you for joining us. And let's make, because mental health is not just, it starts from, how many of us has seen a young child, a mother without thinking, words can hurt. A mother says, oh, for heaven's sake, you're useless. That says, enough times the child hears that, he will think. And then the mother wonders why the child isn't being that confident, not like a friend's child. So let's be careful. Let's be careful how we treat each other and others. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience. I'm sorry the session has gone on longer. Next time, tell us what time you want. We'll keep it narrow. And if you want to be speakers, host, let us know. And Jonathan, I do appreciate that you joined. And so like you mentioned, you have podcasts. I'm sure all these speakers will want to be part of on your show. And Zara, did you want to say anything or finally, or because I don't know if your hand was up or...
I did have my hand earlier, and
Yeah.
thank you very much for that heartfelt share, actually. So yes, I resonate with everything you say. I just wanted to say that I do have YouTube videos to help people if they want to help themselves.
Yeah, great.
Through some
Please
of the
share it.
storytellings I've done. And I don't know if anybody wants to send me a connect. I'm happy to have a one-to-one with you and share what I've learned so you can help heal yourselves. The program isn't about, you know, constantly having to coach people all the time.
Yeah.
It's about being there to ask any questions if there's a little bit of a misunderstanding somewhere or just an extra explanation needs to happen. But yeah, I'm here to help. And I like to help people handle post-traumatic stress syndrome on their own. So we dissolve it. So our approach is dissolve. So people don't need to go down the route of needing antidepressants. So thank you.
I agree with you there. I mean, I use a lot of, I use meditation, hypnotherapy, and this is the same thing I say, even with hypnotherapy. I mean, I remember once one of the biggest companies CEO said to me, "Oh, I suppose you're going to get rid of my cigarettes." No, I said, because you use a cigar as a relaxation, not as a, you know. So he said, great. And he gave me a big contract that set me on my way. I was almost bankrupt, but that's one of those. So what I will say,
excuse me, I want to butt in there because according to John Lenhart, that still doesn't get rid of the PTSD. We need to reprogram 3 parts of the brain. And so this is new material that's come to light. I'd love to introduce you to him if you would like to have a conversation with him. I can't quite sell his entire program in one bit here, but there are things that, there's gaps in psychology. Yeah.
Finally, I'm going to say, Chris had mentioned, Christopher's one of our regulars, and it's one of those things that we would like to, if anybody's interested, offer a safe place for people just to get, and Zara, I would love you to be involved with Julie as well, because Julie is a known, expert in her field. And, it'd be great if we can all sit together and come together how we can help others. So thank you very much from the bottom of my heart, and I'll pass it back to Nair because I've just missed another almost meeting and they're calling me. All right. Thank you very much and wonderful. Please let's connect again. You all got my email. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Lovely to meet you all. Please reach out. I've put my contact details in the chat. What a privilege. Thank you.
As we come to the end of this powerful session, I would like to thank each of you for being part of this important conversation. Thank you for your time, your engagement, and your commitment to change. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nair, for hosting this, and it's been a wonderful session. Thank you very much. All right. Take care, everybody.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Bye.
Thank you, of course. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.